Hello, COM8400 students. This is a self-directed lesson regarding communication theory. So I would like to say, first off, I'd like you to think about the elements of communication. It can be a bit of an odd thing to start picking apart how we communicate. And I encourage you to pause and think about these pieces. When we're talking about how we communicate, think about how you have ideas. What do you want to say? What is it that you wish to communicate? Think about that piece of it. Then think about, well, the words. How would you take your ideas and put them into some words that allow you to share those ideas? And then there's the question of, how do you want to send your idea? So you have your idea, then you have, think about how you're going to shape the idea, and then you think about how you're going to send it to someone and how they're going to receive it. You can talk, you can print, you can text, you can sign language. There's a range of different ways you can send a message. And I would encourage you to think about, just because it's easy for you to send a message this way doesn't mean it's going to be effective or easy for someone at the other end to comprehend what you're saying. It's about thinking about that audience, the person you're trying to reach, the person you're wishing to communicate with. So you have your ideas, the words, you want to package it to make it something that then you can share. For example, think about if you're going to express your love for your mother or your father. What tends to be more impactful for your mother or father? Is it sending a gift, or is it sending a text saying, I like you? Is it putting on a big party and inviting all of your friends to show how much you care about them? Those are all different ways to communicate. And really, for some parents, for me, for example, if I get a text from my children saying, hey, Dad, I love you, it's a good day, that works for me. But for some other people, it's not. It's not. There's an expectation around it. So you have to learn about how the person you wish to communicate would prefer to receive the information. And that makes it can make it a lot of work. Usually does, actually, because there's never one answer. So you can write, and in the business communication context, you can have internal communications where you're inside the company. And that's where you'd be sending information to individual employees or groups of employees, telling them about new rules, about what holidays are going to happen, what happens if there's a new health plan. That's that internal kind of communication. Those are people that you tend to know more about because you have experience with them. And we can start talking about hierarchies as well, but I'm not worried about that right now. You've got, in general, in business, an internal kind of communication. And the other one to think about is external. That could be clients, customers. It could be people that wish to contact you, wish to buy your product, wish to sell you something as well. So think internally, inside, and then externally. Sometimes the techniques and tools you use to reach those audiences are the same. Sometimes they're very different, or they're used differently because employees already have information about the company because of their daily experience inside. But for somebody who's never heard of the company before, you may have to put more information around your message so that they understand what you're saying in that context. I wish it were simple. It's not. Effective communication takes forethought, care, experimentation, and learning. You learn what doesn't work, adapt, try another way. You can have the oral system, spoken word. We just talked about internal written memos, reports, things like that inside a company, and emails and advertising and print outside. Then you can also have oral system, spoken system. And in this one, I kind of include what I'm doing right now, video. But within that, you can have very informal ways of communicating by voice. Gossip. That's where people like to talk about people. I think that's fairly consistent. We like to know what's happening in other people's lives. Sometimes we like to insert ourselves in other people's lives. Sometimes we go, ooh, whoa, we make fun of other people. We laugh with them. We laugh at them. We get angry with them. They get angry at us. That's that very informal system. And one bit of slang term you will hear in North America is the grapevine. You've heard it through the grapevine. It's where somebody says something to somebody else. Did you know this about so-and-so? Oh, and they said, oh, did you know, I heard this person about so-and-so. Did you hear this story? Oh, and then they tell somebody else. It kind of moves through the network. And every time I would suggest the message gets a little bit diluted or a little bit changed. It's kind of dangerous, but you can learn if you go, accept it for what it is. That's that informal kind of things. But you can also have a more formal structure. And I would say this is a more formal structure where I'm speaking with you, I'm recording a message, or I could be in class, we're having a conversation, but there's a structure. I'm roughly leading the communication, but I'm calling upon people to share their thoughts and have asking questions both ways. That's more formal and structured. In a business context, you could think about a business meeting, a Zoom business meeting. In some ways, what we're doing, which we do in regular class, is not that different than a business meeting where you have 20 people who attend a meeting and the boss talks. I hope I don't come across like a boss when I speak. But that's the kind of world. You can have this very informal kind of communication where you're just chatting amongst yourselves, or you have the very structured way of communicating in spoken word, meetings, conference calls, training videos. What I'm doing right now, in a business sense, this could be kind of a training kind of video where you're expected to watch it. So think about that. Think about written, you can have internal, for people who know about the company, external in a business context, that's written. And in oral communication, you have very informal networks, people are talking, or you can have that very more formal structured where there's a specific delivery of information. So think about this. You have information that comes down, information from on high. Think about in your own world where you tend to have somebody who's above you in a hierarchy giving you information that you're expected to share, act on, and push it down. I would say, if we're going to use an example of a family, if you're younger, your parents would be above telling you what to do. And then whether you do it or not is something else. But that's coming from a higher position. In a company, think about the president, Managers, employees doing the work, that information flows downward from someone in a higher authority in that relationship. That's downward. Think about the flow of where the information, and oftentimes it's the information when it's pushed down upon you is difficult. It's like, oh, I'm being told what to do again. I think many people have a natural aversion to being told what to do, but it's still common. It happens. I just want you to think about and recognize what's the feeling you have when you have somebody talking this way at you and telling you what to do. There are advantages to it. It's discipline. It keeps things in order. It can be efficient, and you can set out a specific goal, and we're going to do these things. We will do these things. However, the flip side of that, the other side, a disadvantage to downward communication, is that as it gets pushed down the hierarchy through people, you can get distortion where the message gets a little bit changed, especially spoken. It can be misunderstood when one person interprets something as this and then shares that interpretation to somebody else. And it's slow to have feedback, having any information go back up, whether or not that's going to be workable, whether you like what's going on, whether there was success about it. It's hard often to push the information back up to the person who delivered it. And it can make people really frustrated and go, oh, I'm being told what to do again. So think about that. Think about that communication path coming down and what the challenges might be around it and the advantages. It's the context everything lands within. Upward communication. This is from, in a business context, the workers who are doing the work tell their managers saying, oh, well, this isn't working, this is working, here's my report to you. And then it goes from the managers going up again. It's oftentimes a lot of work to push information upwards. So in a business context, it's from the frontline workers going upwards to managers, supervisors, and then to more senior managers, and then to the president, where you're trying to push up information and be heard. Oftentimes frontline workers complain, nobody listens to me. I've got a good idea. We do this wrong every day. Why do we keep doing this? I've complained about it. Nobody listens. So think about this. If you're in a company where all the information gets pushed down on those employees, and those employees are trying to make things work, but then things aren't working, and they try to push the information back up, and nobody wants to hear them. Think about if you have ever been in a situation like that. What's that feel like? What does it feel like? And here's another question. What kind of situation have you been in where you've done that to someone else? Pushed information down to them and then didn't listen, potentially, to what they said back. Think about it. How would you feel about it? And what circumstances would you might do something like this? You're trying to push information up. So there's the advantage. If you can have upward communication, you can have great advantages because the information can come up and you can gain information and help and make things work better. And the employees feel better. The workers feel better. Oh, somebody listened to me. It's great. They value me. But it's slow. And how many employees do you think are going to want to tell their boss, the person who can tell them if they have a job or not, that, well, boss, I don't think this is a good way to do things. I think you should change your idea to solve this problem. That is difficult. that it's difficult to criticize the person who pays you your salary. That's another dynamic in this. It takes a lot of kind of respect and honesty, and that takes a lot of work to have a manager gain the honesty of and the honest feedback from an employee. That is often very difficult to build. Think about yourselves when you may have been working. Could you talk to your manager about anything? I don't know. My suspicion is you might not talk about everything. Just think about that. We've also got lateral communication, going sideways. This is when you're talking to somebody who's roughly at the same level of you in a hierarchy, like your coworkers. You're all doing the same kind of job and you're sharing ideas. You're sharing, hey, this might work. How about this? How are things going? It's a little bit of more informality to it, but it's information that goes sideways like this. And in my experience, if you have people who are trusting one another, and that is so valuable. It's a teamwork kind of feeling where I'm not worried about talking about my boss, and my boss isn't talking down to me. Hey, we are in the same boat, to use a bit of a slang that often you'll hear in North America. We're all in the same boat. Let's work together. What ideas do you have? Here's an idea I have. Let's make this work despite what the boss says. That can happen too. So that lateral communication, where it goes sideways, decreases misunderstandings. The employees feel empowered. They say, oh yeah, somebody's listening. We're getting things done. We're doing good work. That's an important thing. People like to feel that they're making a difference and they're getting things done, and it's exciting, and there's movement and there's energy. However, just like, think back to when you were in school, think back to playing in your neighborhood when you were a child. All the children in the neighborhood may be roughly the same in that hierarchy, but there's always people who want to be a little bit of rivalry. Ooh, I wish I want that. Or, ooh, well, I don't agree with what they're doing. There's always that tension back and forth. And here's the other thing that can happen. The more comfortable employees get together working and communicating sideways without the manager somehow being involved in it, there can be the difficulty of discipline and making sure you stay on track, because the group, oh, we're really being successful about this, but it may be that over here, the hard stuff is what's really going to make money for the company. People tend to go, well, it's working. Let's keep doing this. It's working. Managers bring people back over here to say, no, that's working. Good ideas there. Okay, we have this as the next problem. How do we solve this? And then push on that. Push. Managers have to clear the way for their employees to succeed. So that's something to watch out for. Here is the activity from following on to today's lesson. And this is your opportunity to get a feeling for how I'm going to be looking for you to submit an activity to a Dropbox. So there is a worksheet about communication gone bad. It's the next item after this video in the after class or the self-directed class activities folder, which you see in your Conestoga course shell. Download the worksheet. It's a Word document. And I'd like you to think about past personal or work experiences. Think of situations where things didn't go well, for whatever the reason might be. And think of an example of one of those situations that was downward communication, where information was being pushed down upon you and things didn't go well from your point of view. It's all from your point of view, when you feel it didn't go well. As an example, think about being in a class and the instructor says, you have to do this. And you're going, I don't understand. That kind of circumstance. So think about a circumstance where You've had information pushed down upon to you from somebody who's in an authority position in the hierarchy. And then think of where you have tried to push information upwards, up, to communicate to somebody who's in a position of authority above you, perhaps. Think about that. And think about where you've talked to people side to side, where they're roughly at your level in the hierarchy, and things still didn't go well. So think about what went wrong, how you felt. You're like, oh, it didn't go well because something. I felt really upset. I felt diminished. Things like that. What didn't go well for you? And then think about what might you do in a similar situation, going a new future situation, or think about that situation. What could you do to what could you have done to improve that situation? So it's a question of reflecting back on where things have gone poorly and that information pushed down on you, trying to push information back up, and when you're dealing with people who are really roughly equal in the hierarchy. I'd like you to think about that, fill in the worksheet, and then put your name and student number on the top of that page, and then use the assignment drop box. There'll be a video that I'm going to include in the after class activities as well. You'll see it there, how to use the Dropbox. So please do that, and we'll experiment with this, and we'll take a look at some of the answers, and we'll talk a little bit about it in class coming up at our next class in our 3-hour block. So give that a try, and when you're done that, please come back to the course shell, and there'll be one more video to watch with a little activity afterwards I'd like you to look at. So I'll see you again in a few minutes.